Well, good afternoon and welcome to Senior Center Television. I'm Kathy Mitchell. Today we have an art chat and oh my God, it's Corbin Bailey and myself. How did that happen? We have a show, it opens tonight. Very excited. We never thought we'd get it up, but here we are, Corbin.
Yep,
So a
and
couple of chicks talking about artwork. Okay, so a couple weeks ago I talked to Garth Conley. And I asked him this question, I'm going to ask it of you. And it's like, Garth, you know, we both studied painting, but I went ahead and moved to three-dimensional. Yeah, you're still painting. You're still painting and drawing. What is it about painting that you just have to keep doing it?
it's what I do best. And it's the most satisfying because it's what I do best.
And there is something, now I've noticed that you do both oils and acrylics. When did you start moving towards acrylics?
I have an allergy to some turpentines.
Okay.
And the solvents, they were breaking down my skin.
Okay, I understand
So
that.
it was a health issue, and it conveniently coincided with advanced technologies in acrylic paints.
This is really interesting, Corbin, because I remember, you know, painting in my studio in Chicago. You know, we had to sort of, I was a kid and my mother kind of let me set up, you know, and I remember sometimes getting really sick from the oils.
Yeah.
Some of those were really toxic.
Yeah.
But acrylics, when they first came out, they were so ugly. They had no depth, the colors, and now they're spectacular.
Yeah, they were really flat, and then there's like a history background to that, because in the late 40s and 50s, when acrylics started to happen, then also painting techniques that were regular house painting techniques were used in fine art.
Yeah.
So it's an interesting evolution.
Do you ever go rogue on materials? Like, for instance, they always say you cannot mix water and oil. And I have for years been using enamel with acrylics successfully.
Right.
Because there are certain things you can do, sanding, you know, gouging, breaking it down so you can do it. And I've used brushes in ways you should never use them. I've used specific kinds of powders and so on in ways that they say you cannot use them. And I always feel I'm sort of setting myself up sort of as a beta site, you know, kind of using these materials in a way to prove that yes, I mean, you can do them. Do you ever do that with your painting?
I do, and that if you mix certain paints together, there is a predicted outcome, and sometimes that outcome is what you want. Like there's a orange peeling or crackling that creates a certain surface when you use the materials wrong. And actually the funny part about that is now they create products that create a surface. Rather than using the materials wrong, you just have a third product.
You're right. The Liquitex Golden stuff, the crackle stuff that we figured out a long time ago.
Right,
Yeah.
and it's because of, part of it's graffiti stuff, but it's just used, it's creating a texture that was considered once wrong is now is what you want to achieve.
And what's really amazing is over the years, some of these third things, as you say, have gotten so much better. I remember some of the materials did not dry well. Did not.
Right.
They would dry. They wouldn't dry clear, and you'd have to remove them because all of a sudden you had this sort of dull sheen over your work, or they didn't mix well with the paints, and now they are just superior.
Right.
Yeah. And the other thing is, we've discovered the wonders of sanding.
Belt sander.
Yeah. Now you use a belt sander.
I do.
You use a belt sander. I use like about 10 different grades of sandpaper, and it's great because I will look at my hands after working on a big piece, and it's like I'm bleeding, I'm red raw. But I love the sanding. How many years have you been doing that now?
I've been doing that for about 10 years.
Yeah.
And it just creates a surface that you can't get doing anything else.
Yeah, I love sanding. The other thing that I love to do, and I don't know if you do this, you do a lot of drawing in your work. I do a lot of gouging and writing in my work. So a lot of times you'll see, if you look under the surface, you'll see a lot of words carved. I carve them in there. So I love doing that, as I like having all sort of these little surprises.
Well, yeah, and I use that as from building and making things. Sometimes when you're in the process of like putting wood together, make a structure, you'll have to make a little drawing of what you're doing in order, if it changes or shifts. And so part of that is what I do in the painting is I make some notations, like I was working on a structure. You know, it's a narrative that runs underground. So.
Okay, now I want to ask you this, because people are always laughing at me. When you are working on a piece, most of the time we work in our head and while we're working. But if you're going to write anything down, you know, structure it out, and I was going to say, usually close to 100% of the time, it never looks the way you originally do it.
That's true.
But what do you use? Because, okay, I have these little funky journals, and I can't tell you how many major pieces I have designed on napkins in coffee shops.
Yeah, I've always wanted to keep a journal because I look at other people and I think this is just so nice. And anytime I come up with any good idea, it's always on a piece of scrap or cardboard or a shirt.
Yeah.
I wrote something out on a shirt one time. And so it's not something that, it doesn't look beautiful like people who have those little moleskin tablets.
Yeah.
And they just have beautiful notes.
I have them because they're gifts.
They're beautiful.
And usually I just write exactly what I'm doing at that time, and then I refer back and I go, I didn't do that. It just didn't do that.
This is a narrative that never happened.
Now this is interesting. You're talking about scrap, because many times when I'm in my studio and I'm working on a big piece, I like underneath to have something like a cotton dish towel or a sheet or a pillowcase, because you can sketch on them.
Yeah.
And then you can turn them over, and then you can turn them inside out. But they're terrific because you actually have a sketching surface while you're actually working.
Yeah.
They're fantastic. Okay, I've asked you all these questions. What do you want to ask me?
Well, yeah, I've thought about this. I've got one big one. And usually people say, well, it's usually who influences you or what got you started? And that's kind of this question is, how old were you, and what were you doing when you realized that you really enjoyed the activity of making something?
This is fascinating because I looked back and I saw drawings I made at age 2.
Yeah.
I have never stopped drawing. There was a period I started painting, doing formal painting, when I was like maybe 12, 13. I was already doing the formal lessons. And then I started taking some courses in high school, usually in the summer, because I did usually academic during the year. I had only one teacher in high school that almost discouraged me, and then I thought, he's not going to do this to me. Around age 15, I discovered materials to start doing mixed media, so I went from oil painting to mixed media. Then I continued to work painting, took a break from in college, and then around 1980, I started doing collage again, and I have not stopped since.
That's when I first saw your work.
In the 80s, just never stopped. It started more like basic collage, which was more almost like a two-dimensional, something almost like Matisse or Clay would do. Was it Clay who did the letters, did his letters and tickets and so on, and then could never do Matisse's cutouts. Nobody can. But I mean, the idea is sort of more of a two-dimensional, and then all of a sudden just started doing these elaborate three-dimensional. And as I got older, all of a sudden I thought, I really miss painting, really miss mixing those colors, experimenting, as Garth said, with the blobs, just all building it up. And as I got older, really started again doing these elaborate three-dimensionals, but started using the painterly techniques again.
What you said is you remember drawing, or you have a drawing from age 2. Yeah. What is the first drawing that you remember, or thing that you made that you really remember getting into, or thinking this feels really fun, or whatever?
Feels fun. I always sketched. I mean, it was just really kind of an amazing thing. I can remember just those cardboard shirt boxes, you know, they always had like a little piece of extra cardboard.
Right.
Just constantly drawing.
Right.
And then what you'd do is, you know, I'd have sketches, and then I'd totally deconstruct them. So, you know, I think we find our niches, and the great thing is, even though we're both retired, semi-retired, we just can't stop doing the artwork.
Right.
It's what I wake up and think about, you know? Go to bed thinking about what I'm going to do in the morning, and I wake up and think about it.
Right.
That's a great thing.
It is.
Yeah.
What was exciting, part of it exciting about putting up this show, one of the many things, is that it felt so good to get all these things out of my studio.
That's it, exactly.
So I could actually pull out other things that I've been ruminating on.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, especially if you start at a really young age, expressing yourself through the arts, whatever art it is, I think, you just do it every day.
That's right.
It's not a self-entertainment. It's different. It's not like physical exercise. It's different. It's probably as close to, you know, a kind of religion, or in between a religion and obsessive-compulsive disorder funneled into a very functional lifestyle.
That's very true. I think we finished on that. We have anything else to say?
No.
We're done.